Your grandparents earned less, exported less, and lived in a country with a smaller GDP per capita than today, and somehow they lived better. Today, we're going to talk about how that's even possible. Think about that for a second, because it sounds completely backwards, and it should make you angry. We've been told our whole lives that economic growth means progress, that more GDP means better lives, that the numbers going up is always good news. But what if the numbers going up mostly benefits people who were already at the top, while everyone else just gets the bill? Let's start with something called purchasing power, and I promise this won't be boring. Just stay with me for a minute. Purchasing power isn't about how many dollars land in your account. It's about what those dollars can actually do for you in real life. In 1995, the median American household earned around $34,000 a year. That sounds almost embarrassing by today's standards, but a median home back then cost about $130,000, which is less than 4 times your annual income. Today, the median household earns roughly $74,000. Sounds like a huge improvement, right? But the median home now costs over $420,000, which is nearly 6 times your annual income. You literally got a raise and became less able to afford the basics at the same time. Economists call this the cost of living trap, and it's been quietly hollowing out the middle class for 3 decades without making many headlines. Now let's go back further to the industrial economy. Coal, steel, manufacturing, because this is where the story really starts. Those industries were dirty, loud, and unglamorous, but they paid union wages to people who never set foot in a college classroom. A coal miner in West Virginia in 1985 could own a home outright, carry health insurance for his whole family, and put his kids through a state school without anyone taking on serious debt. That same lifestyle today is essentially out of reach for a working-class family in most of America, even with 2 incomes coming in. The shift from an industrial economy to a service and knowledge economy was sold to the American public as an upgrade, a modernization, a step forward. And in some ways, it genuinely was. Technology improved, productivity soared, new industries appeared. But the transition came with a hidden price tag that politicians on both sides never fully disclosed to the people paying it. Elizabeth Warren spent years as a Harvard bankruptcy professor before entering politics, and her research found something shocking. By the early 2000s, a 2-income American family was actually more financially fragile than a 1-income family had been in the 1970s. 2. People working full-time, more financially vulnerable than one breadwinner a generation earlier. Let that land for a moment. The reason is simple: fixed costs, like housing, healthcare, and education, exploded, while wages stagnated and the safety net got quietly dismantled piece by piece. The 1990s specifically were this rare economic window that we haven't been able to recreate since the Cold War had just ended. Globalization hadn't fully gutted domestic manufacturing yet. The housing bubble hadn't inflated to insane levels, and healthcare costs were rising, but hadn't gone completely off the rails. Productivity and wages were still moving together in the 90s. That relationship broke apart somewhere around 2000 and has never really recovered since. Since the year 2000, American worker productivity has increased by over 60%. Real wages for median workers have gone up maybe 15 to 18% over that same period. Somebody is pocketing that enormous gap between what workers produce and what they're paid, and it is definitely not the person stocking shelves, driving the delivery truck, or working the night shift. Robert Reich, who served as Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton, has been arguing about this exact problem for decades. His core point is that 1990s prosperity was real and broadly shared across income levels, in a way that today's economic growth simply is not. Today's GDP numbers look spectacular on paper, but the gains are so concentrated at the very top that median Americans barely feel them in their daily lives. Here's a number that should stay with you. In 1990, the top 1% held about 23% of total national wealth. Today, they hold over 38%. The overall pie got bigger, but ordinary Americans ended up with a smaller slice of that bigger pie, which in practical, everyday terms means almost nothing to them. Healthcare is the single biggest economic gut punch of the last 30 years, and it almost never gets discussed honestly. In 1990, America spent about 12% of GDP on healthcare, already high by international standards. Today, that number is approaching 18%, the highest of any wealthy nation on earth. and health outcomes in many categories have actually gotten worse. A working-class family in 1992 with employer-provided insurance had minimal out-of-pocket costs and real protection. Today, millions of Americans faced financial ruin from a single medical emergency, even when they have insurance that is not a healthcare system. That is a trap. College follows exactly the same pattern, and the numbers are almost comically grim. In 1980, you could work a regular summer job and earn enough to cover a full year of tuition at most state universities. That is not nostalgia, that is just arithmetic. Today, you would need to work that same summer job for roughly 4 straight years to pay for 1 year at many public schools. We created an entire generation that had to take on mortgage-sized debt just to access entry-level jobs that their parents got with a high school diploma and a firm handshake. So yes, America exports more today. GDP per capita is higher today. And the technology we carry in our pockets would have seemed like science fiction in 1996. But welfare, in the true economic sense, meaning the actual lived experience of a typical working family, was measurably better in the mid-1990s for a massive portion of the American population. Economists distinguish between nominal growth and real welfare precisely because the headline number can keep climbing while actual human conditions deteriorate, and that is exactly what has been happening. The growth has been real, but the distribution has been so skewed that it stopped translating into better lives for ordinary people around the turn of the millennium. So what would actually fixing this look like in practice? Would it mean reindustrializing and bringing serious manufacturing back to American soil? Would it mean rebuilding union power so workers can actually negotiate for their share of productivity gains? Would it mean regulating housing, capping healthcare costs, and treating college as a public good the way every other wealthy country does? The uncomfortable answer is probably yes to most of those things, and none of them are politically easy or cheap in the short term. But the alternative is continuing to celebrate GDP numbers that most Americans never actually feel while wondering why everyone seems so frustrated and broke. What do you think? Is it actually possible in the near future for America to close this gap between economic growth on paper and real everyday welfare for regular families? Or has the system become too captured by the people who benefit from keeping it exactly the way it is? Drop your honest answer in the comments and make sure you subscribe because there is a lot more of this coming.